Everyone is focusing on Russia versus Ukraine, but you are going to be shocked if you knew what was going on in the West Africa region. Now, get buckled up for this one or get your popcorn ready because we're going to be talking about Russian mercenary groups, we're going to be talking about Islamic extremist groups, we're going to be talking about US Special Forces. Get ready. And you know China is going to be involved one way or another. So let me try to break this all down. Let me start with, why is anybody in Africa to begin with? We are all aware that European nations have gone into Africa and sort of made up their own countries and their own lines. But I'm going to try to talk about a little more recent, more like 2012 era. Okay, we all know this group. They were called ISIS and they're still around, but in 2012 they were very prevalent and they were making ground across North Africa. Now, the US military has always operated out of Africa. Africa is a very strategic position for the United States, and it's important to have partners with other African allies. So this was a really good opportunity for one, to stop ISIS traveling all over Africa, and for two, maybe we can create paramilitaries who can stop these ISIS forces, and now we have more allies. Now, here's where things get complex. Russia has this paramilitary group called Wagner. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of them. This group was actually very secretive up until this year. Like, everyone knew who they were, but they didn't know exactly what they were all about. Most people know Wagner Group for their use in the Ukraine war. But in the case of Africa, Wagner Group has a very unique and very effective way in operating in Western Africa. Wagner Group goes into African countries and they essentially provide you with military training, with military protection, but in return, you have to give them resources. And I promise this will all come together. Just please stick with me because I told you this is very complex and I'm really trying to simplify this for everyone. So, not only does Wagner Group go into these war-torn countries, and I will specify the country soon, but they get these raw materials like copper or gold. That material goes to Russia, and Wagner Group keeps the money. So, Wagner Group went into Sudan in 2017, and this is very significant because they were able to create this massive arms deal between Russia and Sudan in exchange for weapons, and who knows how much money Wagner made from this deal. But more important for Russia is that now they are creating a bond for Sudan and taking away that ally from the United States. 2017 was a really bad year for the United States operating out of Africa. More specifically in Niger, you had 4 US Special Forces members who were ambushed and taken out. Now, from a Special Forces perspective, it makes a lot of sense to be in Africa, to train these militaries to help defend themselves. But from the big picture and the government back home, a lot of people start to question, why are we in Africa? Now, here's where things all come together and why you need to be paying attention to Africa, because the US military has some serious issues right now. The country of Mali in 2021 ended up forming a new military government under a coup. Now, I have to say this, the country of France has been operating out of Mali. Some people call it their Afghanistan. It got so bad in Mali that military members had to leave. French military members had to evacuate Mali because of how bad it got. And I'm talking about Islamist groups, just so you are aware. So, France leaving, that opened the door for Wagner Group to provide military aid to Mali. So, Wagner Group comes in to help Mali. We think it's around 2022. There's no specific date. The reason why we say 2022 is because now we start to see an uptick of Islamist extremist groups going into other countries outside of Mali. More specifically, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Niger, quite literally every country that's surrounding Mali now has a potential threat to have these Islamist groups come in there and cause chaos on the people. Now, the United States does not want to lose partners and wants to secure the region and let everyone know we are here to back you. We want to help you guys. And the biggest fear is that these other countries are going to see what's happening in Mali and say, hey, it's working for them. Let's call Wagner Group to help out our country. This is such a sad situation, not the Islamist extremist groups. The people in these countries are being played with like pawns, and everything is contingent on where Wagner Group can push and move these Islamist groups. They want these groups to go into these countries because first off, they know the United States is operating in some of these countries, but second off, it's good for business. Now, I don't want to downplay what's going on between Russia and Ukraine. That's a legit war. Real souls are being lost. But what's going down in Africa is a really tough and dangerous situation for the United States, so let me explain their side. What's really tough for the United States, as unmoral as it is for the Russians to be doing what they're doing in Mali, they're actually getting results. In fact, Mali doesn't even call them a paramilitary group, they call them military trainers. The US military cannot offer money to these countries. The only thing they can really offer is training for their governments and training for their professional militaries, but we need results. So to help with relations, more specifically in Ghana, there will be a really big war game, and there's been a lot of training out there. The US military is really counting on this war game to set an impact for their government. And again, if you're asking why is the US military in those regions of Africa, it's to counteract what Wagner Group is doing, because the more and more Wagner Group pushes into these countries, that's Russian territory. And think about it, if Russia loses the Ukraine war, it's all good, we'll leave Ukraine. Guess what, boys? We got our stake down in Africa. So, how is China involved? Well, they're in a country called Djibouti. Djibouti is a strategic partner to the United States, but based off of their geological location, they hold the keys to the Red Sea. Now, to be fair to China, they have actually helped in humanitarian aid within the region, but we all know they're also there because it's a great military strategic position. You will notice a pattern. When these countries come into Africa, they sound like they're going to be the greatest thing ever. We're going to help you all out. Africa has an unfortunate history of being played with for the longest time. I don't want to speculate too hard as to why China is operating out of there, but I do know they are pretty good partners with Russia, and the fact that they're both in Africa now, who knows what they can do together. So that's essentially what's going on. The United States does not want to fight Russia directly in Africa, they don't want to fight China, but unfortunately they are fighting them indirectly. So, I say again, pay attention to Africa. I know a lot of you are very interested in Russia, Ukraine. That's very important, but they're pulling some really interesting moves in Africa that could affect a lot of us. I don't know if the answer is to bring in more and more conventional forces within Africa to help our strategic partners. US Special Forces have been operating out of Africa for a long time now. But the more Wagner is pushing and helping these other countries, the more it seems like the United States is going to be put in a position where they might have to bring in an armored unit. They might have to bring in some more light infantry, and I hope this doesn't happen.